The architect's legacy. The Veldari had always believed that time was the most essential ingredient in creation. While other species rushed and fumbled through existence, the Veldari measured their lives in projects that spanned generations. Their crystalline bodies, capable of living for centuries, allowed them to perfect their craft with a patience no shorter-lived species could comprehend. Chief Architect Selvin stood beneath the enormous skeletal framework of what would become the greatest achievement in Veldari history. The foundations alone had taken 27 years to complete, each gravitational stabilizer handcrafted by master artisans who dedicated their lives to perfecting a single component. Selvin's emerald eyes, multifaceted like precious gems, reflected the intricate latticework of alloys that would eventually form the outer hull of the Eternal Dominion. "Is this truly necessary, Chief Architect?" asked Tella, his youngest apprentice. The resources we're dedicating to this single vessel could build a fleet of conventional warships. Selvin turned slowly, his crystalline form catching the light of Veldari Prime's twin suns. "When you have lived as long as I have, you understand that quantity is the refuge of the impatient. This ship will not merely be a weapon. It will be the perfect expression of Veldari's superiority." "The Council is concerned about the timeline," Tella persisted. 300 years is. "The Council approved my designs," Selvin interrupted, his voice resonating with harmonics that conveyed absolute authority. "They understand what you do not. Our greatness lies in our methodical perfection. Let the lesser races build their disposable crafts. We create for eternity." The construction proceeded exactly as Selvin had planned. Each phase was meticulously documented in the Great Archive, the knowledge preserved for future generations of architects and engineers who would carry on the work after the current masters had passed into memory. 76 years into construction, Selvin's crystalline form began to dull, signaling the end of his natural life cycle. Before dissolving back into the elemental crystals from which all Veldari emerged, he gathered his disciples. "The Eternal Dominion is my legacy," he told them, his voice growing fainter as his physical form became increasingly translucent. "When completed 3 centuries from now, it will herald a new age for our people. We will no longer be observers of the galaxy. We will be its masters." His apprentice Tella, now a master architect in her own right, accepted the burden of continuing his vision. "It shall be as you designed, Master Selvin. Every specification, every measurement, every material, exactly as you intended." Selvin's final words resonated through the chamber as his form dispersed into shimmering dust. Perfection cannot be rushed. 140 years into construction, the Veldari made first contact with humans. The Bictal species seemed unremarkable to the Veldari observers, their biological forms frail and short-lived, their technology crude and inefficient. But what they lacked in elegance, they compensated for with a frenetic energy that both amused and concerned the Veldari High Council. High Councilor Neem reviewed the reports from their observation posts near the edge of human space. "They've gone from combustion engines to crude faster-than-light travel in less than 3 centuries, he noted with mild surprise. "Impressive, in a haphazard way." "Their technology is derivative and unrefined," replied military strategist Zol, her crystalline form pulsing with cool blue light, the Veldari equivalent of dismissive contempt. "Their ships break down constantly. They sacrifice durability for speed of production. Yet they've colonized 17 worlds in just 70 years, countered Science Director Hava, while we've spent that same time perfecting the quantum field stabilizers for a single vessel. A vessel that will render their entire fleet obsolete," Zol responded firmly. "The Eternal Dominion will demonstrate the superiority of patient craftsmanship over hasty expansion." Neem's faceted eyes shifted hues slightly, a sign of contemplation. "Perhaps we should increase our surveillance of these humans. Their development curve is concerning." By the time they could pose any threat, Zol reassured him, "Our masterpiece will be complete. Let them build their disposable armadas. When the time comes, we will show them what true mastery means." As decades turned to centuries, The Eternal Dominion took shape with exquisite precision. Each component was tested for a minimum of 5 years before installation. Materials were purified through processes that took decades to complete. The Central Artificial Intelligence Core, grown from crystalline matrices that mimicked Veldari consciousness, was educated through 200 years of continuous simulation. Tella had long since dissolved back to elemental form, passing leadership to her successor Vorn, who eventually yielded to Architect Prime Calith. But the vision remained unchanged, each generation of Veldari craftsmen adding their expertise while honoring the original design. Meanwhile, human expansion accelerated at a pace that increasingly troubled the Veldari observers. Their crude mining operations stripped resources from entire systems in mere decades. Their ships, while individually inferior to even the smallest Veldari vessels, were produced in such quantities that they swarmed through space like insects. "They've discovered our observation posts in the Arcturus sector," reported Intelligence Director Sova to the High Council. Their response was unexpected. Hostility. Asked High Counselor Marin, who had succeeded Neem 40 years prior. No, they sent a diplomatic delegation. They're requesting formal contact and cultural exchange. The council chamber filled with the harmonic resonance of Veldari laughter, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. What could they possibly exchange with us? Marin wondered aloud. Their oldest structures are younger than our newest apprentices. They're persistent, Sova admitted, and they're advancing more rapidly than our models predicted. They've begun experimenting with technologies that should be beyond their comprehension. Military strategist Zol, one of the few council members who had witnessed the beginning of the Eternal Dominion project, raised a crystalline appendage for attention. The great ship will be completed within a decade. I propose we finish our masterpiece before engaging with these humans. Then we can approach from a position of unquestioned superiority. The council agreed unanimously. The Veldari would remain in the shadows for just a while longer. 298 years after Selvin laid the first foundation, the Eternal Dominion was complete. The vessel dwarfed anything previously constructed in known space, a perfect synthesis of art and devastation. Its crystalline hull absorbed energy rather than reflecting it, making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Its weapons systems could destabilize matter at the subatomic level. Its shields could withstand the direct energy output of a small sun. Architect Prime Maris, the seventh to hold the position since the project began, stood on the observation platform with High Counselor Marin as the final calibrations were performed. 3 centuries of uncompromising dedication, Marin said, his voice resonating with pride. Selvin would be pleased. The humans have expanded to over 300 systems in the time we've built this single vessel, Maris noted. Was this truly the wisest use of our resources? Marin's crystalline form stiffened slightly. You sound like Tella once did. History proved her concerns unfounded. The humans build quantity. We create quality. Their entire civilization is like their ships, hastily assembled, impermanent, destined to break down. Yet they persist, Maris countered. And they adapt quickly. Which is precisely why we must establish our dominance now, Marin said. The Eternal Dominion will demonstrate our technological superiority in a way they cannot ignore. They will understand their place in the galactic order. Military strategist Zol approached, her ancient form now dulled with age. All systems are operational, High Counselor. We await your command. Marin's multifaceted eyes gleamed with anticipation. The wait is over. Deploy the Eternal Dominion to the human colony world Epsilon Indi II. Let us introduce ourselves properly to our hasty neighbors. As the massive vessel detached from its construction cradle, a ripple of harmonic vibrations passed through the assembled Veldari, their equivalent of thunderous applause. 3 centuries of patient craftsmanship was about to demonstrate its worth. The Eternal Dominion entered subspace with perfect precision, its revolutionary drive system eliminating the turbulence that plagued lesser vessels. Within moments, the greatest achievement in Veldari history vanished from their home system, bound for its historic first mission. On the command deck, Captain Loras settled into the crystalline control interface, his consciousness merging with the ship's systems. Set course for the human colony. Travel time: 14 hours, 23 minutes. Should we announce our arrival? Asked his second-in-command. Loras considered the question briefly. No. Let them witness our perfection without preparation. The impact will be greater. The eternal dominion sliced through subspace with incomparable grace, carrying with it the culmination of Veldari achievement and the promise of a new galactic order, one where patience and perfection would reign supreme over hasty improvisation. Little did they know that 14 hours and 23 minutes would be more than enough time for humanity to upset 3 centuries of careful planning. The human response. Admiral Helena Chen stared at the holographic projection hovering above the situation table. The unknown vessel, if it could even be called a vessel rather than a mobile planet, stood out as an anomaly so significant that 6 different AI systems had flagged it simultaneously. "Confirm dimensions," she ordered, her voice steady despite the implications of what she was seeing. Lieutenant Commander Okoro consulted his neural interface. "Confirmed, Admiral. The object is approximately 43 kilometers in length, with a mass consistent with ultra-dense materials far beyond our current manufacturing capabilities." Chen ran a hand through her short gray hair. After 30 years commanding Earth's 5th Fleet, she thought she'd seen everything the universe had to offer. She was wrong. "And you're certain it's on course for Epsilon Indi?" "Yes, Mom. At current velocity, it will arrive in approximately 13 hours. Chen's eyes narrowed. "Get me a direct line to the Security Council. Now." Within 30 minutes, representatives from the United Earth government's highest authority were assembled virtually, their holograms flickering around Chen's command center aboard the UEAS Indomitable. "The vessel appears to be of Veldari origin," she explained, manipulating the holographic display to highlight specific features. "We've had limited contact with their observation posts, but they've rejected all diplomatic overtures for the past century." "Why now? And why with that?" asked Counselor Mbeki, gesturing toward the massive ship. "Unknown," Chen admitted, "but the timing can't be coincidental. Our deep space telescopes detected unusual activity in their home system 3 days ago. I believe this is what they were preparing." "A single ship doesn't constitute an invasion fleet," noted Defense Secretary Ivanova skeptically. "With respect, Madam Secretary," Chen countered, "this isn't just a ship. Based on our preliminary scans, it could potentially outgun our entire combined fleet. This is either a demonstration of force or the prelude to something worse." President Rodriguez's hologram leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Chen took a deep breath. "The Veldari have been observing us for centuries. They know our capabilities, our fleet deployments, our defenses. But there's one thing they consistently underestimate: our adaptability." She gestured, and a new set of schematics appeared. "Project Hydra," she continued, "a theoretical rapid response manufacturing protocol we developed for existential threats. We've never had cause to implement it. Until now." "You want to activate Hydra for a single ship?" Ivanova asked incredulously. "I want to activate Hydra because that single ship represents a civilization that has spent centuries building the perfect weapon to establish dominance over us," Chen replied firmly. "The Veldari don't think like us. They don't value what we value. To them, this ship is a statement that their patience and precision makes them our superiors." President Rodriguez studied the schematics carefully. "How quickly can Hydra be implemented?" "If I get authorization now, we can have the first wave ready before the Veldari ship reaches Epsilon Indi." The Security Council members exchanged glances. "Do it," Rodriguez said finally. "Whatever resources you need. Humanity didn't come this far to be intimidated back to our homeworld." Across human space, an unprecedented industrial mobilization began. Manufacturing stations that normally competed fiercely suddenly coordinated their efforts under unified protocols. The Hydra directives were transmitted to every major production facility within 6 hours. The concept was simple but revolutionary: standardized modular components that could be rapidly assembled into combat-ready vessels. Quality control was handled by advanced AI systems that could perform inspections in milliseconds rather than months. Engineering teams worked in continuous shifts, their efforts coordinated through neural networks that allowed instantaneous sharing of innovations and solutions. On Luna shipyards, production coordinator Talia Rice watched as assembly bots swarmed over the growing framework of what would become the first of the Hydra-class response vessels. Status update, she demanded, flicking through neural projections faster than any human could have processed a century earlier. Hull integrity at 92% of optimal, reported her assistant. Weapon systems at 88%. Propulsion at 95%. Not good enough. Rice snapped. The Velderi ship will reach Epsilon Indi in 7 hours. I want that vessel ready for launch in 5. Ma'am, even with the Hydra protocols, that's pushing safety margins. Safety margins are a luxury we don't have. Rice cut him off. The people on Epsilon Indi don't have safety margins. Make it happen. Similar scenes played out across human space as the true power of humanity's distributed manufacturing capability was unleashed for the first time. Shipyards that normally took months to produce a single vessel suddenly completed dozens in hours. Mining operations stripped asteroids in minutes rather than years. Autonomous refineries working at capacities that would have been suicidal with human crews. Admiral Chen watched the production reports flood in with grim satisfaction. The Velderi spent centuries creating one perfect weapon, she told her officers. We'll show them what humanity can do in a day. Captain Loros of the Eternal Dominion emerged from subspace at the edge of the Epsilon Indi system with supreme confidence. The maneuver was flawless, as expected of a vessel 3 centuries in the making. Scan for defensive installations, he ordered, his crystalline form pulsing with anticipation. Scanning, his sensor officer replied. Detecting standard human orbital platforms. Minimal threat assessment. Colony population approximately 12 million. Perfect. Loras nodded, the gesture and affectation adopted from studying human communication patterns. Proceed to optimal demonstration position. Prepare primary disintegration array 4. Captain, the sensor officer interrupted, his harmonic tones shifting to an urgent frequency, detecting multiple subspace distortions approaching our position. Loros tilted his crystalline head. Curious. Our intelligence suggested no significant human presence in this system beyond the colony defenses. These are new signatures, Captain. They don't match any known human vessel profiles in our database. The subspace distortions resolved into solid shapes on the Velderi sensors, and for the first time in his 300-year existence, Captain Loros experienced something akin to shock. Not one vessel emerged from subspace, nor a dozen, but hundreds, each smaller than the Eternal Dominion but still formidable, their hulls gleaming with the unmistakable newness of recent construction. Impossible, he whispered. Our intelligence indicated no such fleet existed 72 hours ago. Captain, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessels. A moment later, the image of Admiral Helena Chen appeared before them, projected into the crystalline command center. Velderi vessel, she began without preamble, you have entered restricted human space without authorization. Your vessel has been identified as a potential threat to human security. You will power down weapons systems and prepare for boarding, or we will be forced to respond with appropriate measures. Loros's multifaceted eyes shifted hue with indignation. This is the Eternal Dominion, the culmination of 3 centuries of Velderi engineering. We do not recognize your authority in this or any system. Stand down your hastily assembled vessels before they are destroyed. Chen's expression remained impassive. I understand your ship took nearly 300 years to build. Impressive. We built this fleet in the last 12 hours. Preposterous. Laura scoffed. Such construction times would result in catastrophic failure rates. Perhaps by your standards, Chen acknowledged. But we're not afraid of failure, Captain. It's how we learn. Now, I'll ask once more. Power down your weapons. Laura severed the communication with a gesture. Activate all defensive systems. Prepare to demonstrate the futility of quantity over quality. The Eternal Dominion hummed with power as systems that had been meticulously calibrated over decades came online simultaneously. Its crystalline hull began to pulse with energy, preparing to unleash devastation unparalleled in galactic history. But the human fleet moved with a coordination that defied Velderi predictions. Instead of attacking directly, the vessels dispersed into a complex three-dimensional formation that no Velderi tactical simulation had anticipated. "They're attempting to surround us," the tactical officer observed. "Irrelevant," Laura's replied confidently. "Our shields can withstand their combined firepower. Target the command vessel and..." Before he could complete the order, the human fleet opened fire, not with conventional weapons, but with precisely calculated electromagnetic pulses that resonated at frequencies exactly matching the harmonics of the Velderi crystalline systems. Alarms resonated throughout the Eternal Dominion as systems began to fluctuate unexpectedly. 3 centuries of perfect engineering confronted an enemy that had studied those perfections and designed specific countermeasures in hours rather than centuries. "Impossible," Laura's repeated, his voice now carrying harmonics of genuine fear. "How could they know our resonance frequencies?" The answer, though he couldn't possibly comprehend it, was simple. Humanity had gambled. They had launched not one design of ship, but 37 variations, each testing different approaches. The ones that worked continued firing. The ones that failed quickly adjusted their tactics or sacrificed themselves to gather more data. It was evolution applied to warfare. Messy, wasteful, imperfect, but devastatingly effective against an opponent that valued immaculate execution over adaptability. When the Eternal Dominion finally fired its main weapon, a subatomic destabilizer that could theoretically reduce a planet to its component particles, it struck not Admiral Chen's command ship, but an empty decoy. Before the Velderi could recalibrate, the human fleet had already reorganized, attacking from new vectors with modified frequencies. 3 hours into what should have been a triumphant demonstration of Velderi superiority, Captain Laura stared at damage reports with disbelief. Systems that had been perfected over lifetimes were failing under the relentless, chaotic assault of a fleet that had existed for less than a day. "We must retreat," his executive officer suggested, crystalline form dulled with the effort of maintaining functionality. "Return to Velderi space, analyze their tactics, develop countermeasures." Laura knew she was right, but the thought of retreating, of admitting that 3 centuries of perfect engineering could be countered by 12 hours of human improvisation, was almost unbearable. Before he could give the order, Admiral Chen's image appeared again on their command deck. "Your shields are failing, Captain," she observed calmly. "Your main propulsion system is damaged beyond your capacity to repair in this engagement. I'm offering you one final opportunity to surrender before we are forced to destroy the Eternal Dominion." Laura straightened his crystalline form, dignity intact despite the circumstances. "How?" he asked simply. "How did you build so many ships so quickly?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because we had to. That's what humans do, Captain. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome. 300 years of perfect engineering," Laura said, his voice resonating with complex harmonics of disbelief and reluctant admiration. "Defeated by vessels constructed in hours." "Not defeated," Chen corrected him. "Not necessarily. There's another option. We could learn from each other." The treaty that eventually emerged from the Epsilon Indi incident, as it came to be known, transformed the relationship between humanity and the Velderi. The crystalline beings never fully abandoned their methodical approach to creation, but they gained a new appreciation for human adaptability. Humans, in turn, learned valuable lessons about precision and patience from their Velderi counterparts. The Eternal Dominion was eventually repaired, becoming a floating university where the best minds of both species exchanged ideas. The Hydra-class vessels, many of which had indeed suffered catastrophic failures after the battle, were refined through Veldari engineering principles. Admiral Chen and Captain Loras, once adversaries, became unlikely colleagues in the new interspecies exchange program. During one of their many discussions, Loras finally asked the question that had haunted him since their first encounter. "How did you know we were coming?" "Our mission was classified at the highest levels." Chen smiled. "We didn't, not with certainty. But we've been watching you watch us for decades. We figured eventually you'd make a move. So we prepared, not with a perfect plan, but with thousands of imperfect ones. Your species continues to confound me," Loras admitted. "You embrace chaos and imperfection, yet somehow extract order from it. And your people create works of staggering beauty and precision," Chen countered. "The galaxy needs both our approaches." As their conversation continued, far above them, the stars shone on a galaxy where two fundamentally different philosophies of existence had found not perfect harmony, but something more important: mutual respect. The Veldari continued to build their masterpieces over generations, while humanity raced from innovation to innovation. But now they did so together, each complementing the other's strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. It wasn't perfect. But as humanity had taught the Veldari, perfect wasn't always necessary for extraordinary.